Hello, today we are talking about health literacy and patient education. And when we look at the literature, we find some surprising things that hopefully we can learn from and become better clinicians. The first thing we look at is why there is decreased adherence to plans of care. And early on, it is easy for a healthcare provider to think it's the responsibility of the patient, or any lack of adherence is um, on the patient and not the provider. Some reasoning behind this may be a lack of motivation by the patient to change or improve. Maybe the patient feels mistrust or unsupported by the provider, or maybe the patient is unable to comprehend or understand what the provider actually wants. And this gets into health literacy. So when we look at health literacy, we know this is different than literacy uh, in common language. So when we look at health literacy, we're looking at the ability to understand health information. And so the literature supports socioeconomic status may play a role in health literacy. Of course, we shouldn't assume that just because somebody is from a lower socioeconomic status that they automatically have a lowered health literacy, but it is something the provider should consider. So this was common for healthcare providers to assume that decreased adherence was a result of patient noncompliance. Uh, we know that Dr. Rudd kind of challenged our perceptions and thinking and supported the view that providers need to recognize their role in increasing health literacy. First and foremost, the provider should recognize if the patient has low health literacy. Maybe this is through little cues the patient provides, such as, oh, I forgot my glasses, I can't read this right now, or I'll go ahead and read it when I'm at home. So, not demonstrating the ability to read back the instructions provided by the provider. The healthcare provider should pick up on this. It's also the responsibility of the provider to be supportive to the patient, and this can take many forms. But we do know that when the provider is supportive, then the patient will recognize that, and then that may increase motivation to adhere to the plan of care. So just by being a listening ear and being open to patient feedback, we're going to see increased adherence. The main thing I want to talk about, though, is health literacy and improving patient education. If our goal as healthcare providers is to work with the patient in completing the plan of care, then we must improve our patient education. First and foremost, we need to set realistic expectations. We can't set something above and beyond the capability of the patient and expect them to be successful in it. Of course, all expectations should match the patient beliefs. So this is where we recognize that each patient is unique and individual, and we need to take into consideration their views and their thoughts. Patient education should also include an ability for the provider to provide means to address the goal or address the task. So to put this into context, if as an athletic trainer, I want a patient to do a home exercise program, I need to make sure the home exercise program is tailored to what they have at home. I can't expect them to do an exercise with 5 pounds if they do not have a 5 pound weight. Maybe it is talking about things they do have at their home that they can use as a supplemental weight. If I'm expecting them to do resistance training, then maybe I provide them with a resistance piece of equipment like a TheraBand. But as a healthcare provider, I must give them a means to address the goal and task at hand. There are other things the provider should recognize when improving patient education. And the big thing is that instructions should be provided orally, and then all oral instructions are backed up and supported by written instruction. This is where the patient is going to take those instructions home and refresh their memory maybe 1 day, 2 days, or even a week later. So if we expect the patient to remember what we say, but don't give them anything to refer back to, of course, adherence is going to be lowered. Talking about health literacy, we need to make sure that we provide the patient with material that is in plain language. If we use fancy medical terms, the patient will not understand, and therefore compliance will be very low. We must provide all written materials in a plain language. Pictures will also aid in patient education. If we want to consider health literacy and the fact that certain terms may be unknown to the patient, then we can always provide a better explanation using diagrams or photos or examples of the exercises or task at hand. Other ways we can improve patient education is to encourage uh, outside resources. We know in today's technology, the World Wide Web is a great resource for patients. They can go on it at their convenience and they can learn things that are applicable to them. However, this should be done with caution. We should encourage the patient to use reputable resources. So we shouldn't go to jimbobshealthcare.com and expect to get good answers. We want to use reputable sources that are grounded in scientific research and has cited literature, and providing the patient with websites that are reputable will improve their health literacy as well. Again, the goal is to improve patient education by recognizing the provider's role. If we really want to increase adherence, we need to make sure that the provider recognizes their responsibility and does everything in his or her power to recognize health literacy and improve outcomes for the patient. As you can see by this Padlet, there are many interconnected ideas and moving parts. And so it's not as simple as just the patient's responsibility on one side and the provider's responsibility on the other side. The patient and the provider must work together and work collaboratively in order to have good outcomes. Hopefully, by building a rapport with the patient, the provider and patient can achieve goals that are realistic and match the patient beliefs, and the patient is provided with everything they need to address the task and goals. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.